Through the First Antarctic Night, 1898 to 1899, a narrative of the voyage of the Belgica among newly discovered lands and over an unknown sea about the South Pole, by Frederick A. Cook, M.D., surgeon and anthropologist of the Belgian Antarctic expedition, with an appendix containing a summary of the scientific results. Illustrated by William Heinemann, London, 1900. To the little family, the officers, the scientific staff, and the crew of the Belgica, whose fortunes and misfortunes made this story of the first human experience throughout a South Polar year, to these men, whose close companionship and sturdy good fellowship made life endurable during the storms, the darkness, and the monotony of the Antarctic, this book is dedicated. Introduction. For 300 years, explorers have been active in pushing aside the realms of the unknown towards the North Pole, but the equally interesting South Pole has, during all this time, been almost wholly neglected. There have been expeditions to the far south, but compared to Arctic ventures, they have been so few and their work within the polar circle has been so little that the results have been largely forgotten. It is not because valuable results have not been obtained in the Antarctic, but because the popular interest in the Arctic has completely overshadowed the reports of the antipodes. The search for the northwest and northeast passages, which commerce demanded to reach the trade of the Orient during the 17th and early part of the 18th centuries, fixed the public eye persistently northward. This extended effort to find an easy path to the wealth of Asia was fruitless, but it was followed by a whale fishery, a sealing industry, and a fur trade, which has proven a priceless boon to mankind. As a result of these two periods of trade exploration, we have now entered upon a third stage, a period of scientific research which will not and should not end until the entire area is outlined in the growing annals of exact knowledge. The Antarctic has a history somewhat similar, but it is almost forgotten. Until 1772, the South Frigid Zone was pictured by fiction writers in flowery phraseology. They placed here a fertile country, projecting far northward into the Atlantic and the Pacific. This land was supposed to be inhabited by a curious race of people who possessed a superabundance of gold, precious stones, and other material wealth. To learn the truth of this new land of promise, Captain James Cook was sent out in 1772. Cook, with a thoroughness which characterized all his efforts, circumnavigated the globe close enough to the Antarctic Circle to convince the world that if land of large extent existed around the South Pole, it must be far beyond the usual ice limits. 60 years later, through the efforts of American and British sealers who had searched every known rock of the southern seas for fur seals and sea elephants, the United States, England, and France fitted out rival expeditions. The combined work of these expeditions marked the second period of Antarctic exploration and resulted in the re-establishment of a great polar continent on the austral chart. 60 years again passed before another expedition was sent to press beyond the southern barriers of ice. The voyage of the Belgica is the beginning of a third revival of Antarctic exploration, which has been brought about by determined efforts, made almost simultaneously in England, Germany, Belgium, and the United States. This third period of Antarctic research, like the third stage of Arctic exploration, is wholly in the interest of science. The first country to complete the outfit of a modern expedition was Belgium. England and Germany now have expeditions in preparation, but the honor of being the first to send a scientific venture with trained specialists and appropriate equipment to the Antarctic belongs to Belgium. For the origin of the Belgian Antarctic expedition, we are indebted to the energetic efforts of Lieutenant Adrien de Gerlache. By soliciting private subscriptions and finally by securing the financial aid of the Belgian government, Gerlache succeeded in collecting the $60,000 which were barely sufficient to fit out the Enterprise. The vessel selected for the mission was the Norwegian sealer Patria, which was rechristened Belgica. She is a strong vessel of about 250 tons, built some 10 years ago. She was not strengthened or altered on the plan of Nansen's vessel, the Fram, and has been so often stated. Nevertheless, she proved herself a craft of extraordinary endurance, withstanding the thumps of rocks, iceberg collisions, and pressure in the pack ice in a manner perfectly marvelous. Owing to a scarcity of funds, the accoutrements of the ship and the outfit for polar exploration were somewhat imperfect. If we had been compelled to stay longer, or if it had been necessary to make a forced overland journey or a retreat homeward on the ice, we should have found our equipment inadequate. The members of the expedition were from many lands, as the following list will show. Commandant, Adrien de Gerlache, Belgian. Captain, Georges Lecointe, Belgian. Executive Officer and Hydrographer. Roald Amundsen, First Mate. Emile Danko, deceased, Belgian, magnetician. Emil Rakovica, Romanian, naturalist. Henryk Arktowski, Russian, geologist, oceanographer, and meteorologist. Antoine Dobrovolsky, Russian, assistant meteorologist. Frederick A. Cook, American, surgeon, anthropologist, and photographer. Engineers: Henry Sommers, Belgian. Max van Rysselberg, Belgian. Sailors: Belgians, Jules Malert, Jan van Mierlo, Gustave Dufour, Louis Michot. Norwegians: Adam Tollefsen, Hjalmar Johansen, Johan Koren, Engebret Knudsen, Carl Augustus Wienck, deceased. Altogether, we numbered 19 when leaving Punta Arenas, 7 officers, housed in the cozy little cabins, and 12 Marines, including Dobrowolski, housed in the forecastle. Thus divided, we were 2 happy families, and as such we tried to extract from the frozen south polar surroundings such rare comforts as regions of perennial snows afford. The Belgica left Antwerp at the end of August 1897. She steamed and sailed down the Atlantic to Madeira, then across to Rio de Janeiro, down to Montevideo, and into the Strait of Magellan to Punta Arenas. After spending some time in the Fuegian channels and among the Cape Horn Indian tribes, we took our departure from the known world at Staten Island on January 13, 1898. We sighted the South Shetland Islands a week later, where, during a violent tempest, we lost by an accidental fall overboard the young and faithful Norwegian sailor, Wienck. We next crossed the ever-foggy and ever-tempestuous waters of Bransfield Strait, and on the afternoon of January 23, 1898, came in sight of the outer fringe of a new land, the Palmer Archipelago. Entering this, we discovered a new highway, which in size compares favorably with Magellan Strait. To the east and west of this strait, we charted about 500 miles of a land which had never before been seen by human eyes, part of a great continental mass which probably surrounds the South Pole. It is buried even in midsummer under a ponderous weight of perennial ice. Passing out of the strait, we enter the South Pacific, and after skirting the western border of Graham Land to Adelaide Island, and then to Alexander Island, we attempted to enter the main body of the pack ice westward. The work of the first 3 weeks in the new regions proved the discovery of a highway perfectly free for navigation during the summer months from Bransfield Strait, 200 miles southwesterly through an unknown land to the Pacific. This highway has received the name of our ship. To the east of Belgica Strait, we discovered a high, continuous country which probably connects with the land charted as Gramland. This has been christened Dankoland, in memory of our companion, Lieutenant Danko, who died on the ship during the long drift in the pack ice. The land to the west of the strait is cut up into islands by several channels, and is named Palmer Archipelago, in honor of Captain Nathaniel Palmer, the American sealer, who was the first of all men to see the outer fringe of this land. Scattered about in the waters of Belgica Strait are about 100 islands and several groups of islands. About 50 of these are of considerable size. The islands, the capes, the bays, the headlands, and the mountains have mostly received the names of Belgian friends of the expedition, but prominent outside workers have not been forgotten, as is evidenced by Nansen Island and Neumayer Channel. Each officer was given the privilege of bestowing some names, hence 2 islands which fell to my lot are named after the city of my home and the first mayor of Greater New York, Brooklyn and Van Wyck Islands. After passing out of the strait into the open Pacific, we strove to follow the mainland southward, but the pack ice forced us away. Late in February, we entered the main body of the sea ice, intending to push southward and westward. After penetrating 90 miles, we found ourselves firmly beset. Unable to extricate the ship, we drifted with the ice to and fro, but generally west for 13 long months. During the early part of the long polar night, Lieutenant Danko died. Except for the depression of this melancholy bereavement, the health of the members of the expedition was fairly good, but the 70 days of continued darkness weighed heavily upon us. The scientific work was prosecuted throughout the year of the drift. Each department has reason to feel proud of its records, but all were happy when, on March 14, 1899, we were released from the icy fetters which had held us so long. We left the pack from longitude 103 degrees west of Greenwich and latitude 70 degrees 45 minutes south. We had thus drifted from about 85 degrees to 103 degrees of west longitude and between 70 degrees and 72 degrees south of latitude. In March and April, we drifted westerly to longitude 92 degrees 25 minutes, where we were on April 25th. From May to October, we drifted back again to a place near our starting point. From November to the time we left the ice, we drifted rapidly westward. The winter drift then is eastward, the summer drift is westward, and this is also the direction of the prevailing winds. Our farthest south was on May 31st, latitude 71 degrees, 36 minutes, 5 seconds, south, longitude 87 degrees, 40 minutes west. It would not at any time have been possible to push farther poleward in our position. The various soundings which we took proved the existence of a sea where there was previously thought to be land. Through these soundings also we have discovered a submarine bank comparable to the bank off the coast of Newfoundland. The excellent series of magnetic observations by Master Lecointe indicate the magnetic pole to be about 200 miles east of its present assigned position. The hourly meteorological observations under the direction of Master Artowski are of priceless value to students of weather. The painstaking zoological work by Master Rakowica and the numerous other observations and studies of Antarctic life and phenomena are of like value. As an American, I can with due modesty say that the work of this, the Belgian Antarctic expedition, will form the stepping stone to future Antarctic exploration. In the following pages, I have not attempted to elaborate on our experiences and observations. This I leave for future work. My aim has been to select from my diary and notes such data as might prove of interest to the general reader. In my desire to condense this story into a single volume, I have omitted much of the daily routine of life. I have also omitted a discussion of technical topics. There is no pretense made by me that this book contains all of the scientific data of the expedition. The observations, the descriptions of specimens, and scientific deductions will be published in other channels. The Belgian government has liberally set aside a sum sufficient to publish in proper form the scientific records, and a commission is at present occupied in making a preliminary study of the material with this end in view. we did not start out to mount the South Pole, as we have been reported. Our aim was a less ambitious work of scientific exploration along the edge of the unknown. In this, we were reasonably successful. My story, then, is not one of pole chasing, with its many certain disappointments. It is a record of the first expedition to pass through the ordeal of the long Antarctic night and its gloomy winter storms. It is, I hope, a contribution of new human experience in a new, inhuman world of ice. The illustrations in this book are made, with but a few exceptions, from photographs, and since these are the first photographic reproductions of Antarctic life and scenes, it is hoped that they will be of value as records of the unknown South. In the color plates, we have aimed to give few examples of the daily touches of color, which serve to relieve the awful monotony and glittering whiteness peculiar to the South Polar regions. The vivid complexity of delicate shades of most scenes is impossible of imitation by the present means of the printer's art, but the success attained by the artist, the engraver, and the printer in these reproductions has been an agreeable surprise to me. In the notices of my return from the Antarctic, and in the story of the Belgian Antarctic expedition as published in the American newspapers, it has unintentionally been made to appear as if I desired to claim a major share of the credit for the results of this expedition. This I wish to disclaim. The credit of organizing the expedition belongs to its commander, Adrien de Gerlache. The honor of sending out the venture belongs to the enterprise of Belgian citizens. The fame and honor, which are the results of a successful expedition, belong to every member of the expedition. Everyone, from the highest officer to the cabin boy, has done his share of the work nobly and faithfully. Everyone, then, from the cabin to the forecastle, deserves equally the honorable mention which is the explorer's only pay. Frederick A. Cook, M.D.